Back here on SportsLine, talking about the Titans draft, the eventful weekend they had, including the trade of A.J. Brown. Phone lines open, 737-7767. We go back to the line, say hello to David. David, good evening and welcome to SportsLine.
Yeah, good evening to you. And I was glad you were. I was glad you were present at the Nashville SC game. However, I want to talk about the Titans first. I think there is only one issue. There is only one question to be asked when it comes to A.J. Brown. And that question is, how much was A.J. Brown wanting? Did he want $25 million?
Sounds like he wanted more than that.
And yes, and knowing A.J. Brown, after the first year, after his first year, going into the second year, in the middle of the second year, I told someone they need to trade A.J. Brown now because I have seen a character that I didn't like. You know, when it comes that he is going to give them problems when it comes to signing a contract. You know, you can see it if you are very observant when players sit on the bench, you know, when they're not playing and so forth. You know, you can see through them and see, you know, there is character, there is playing on the field. There's no question he can play on the field, but the character is a problem. And I felt in the second year he will give them a big problem. And that he is someone who will go for the biggest money. And that they could have, they should be looking at that. Then, the other issue I want to say is, going to a team, the Titans had Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry was not with the Titans, A.J. Brown wouldn't have done as well as he would have because the concentration will be on him. First, teams are looking at is Derrick Henry getting this ball. Derrick Henry is their primary target when they are defending the Titans. The Philadelphia Eagles does not have Derrick Henry. So it's not a question of they'll be looking at their running back, you know, who ran for them last season. So the target is, you know, they will home in on A.J. Brown. So I don't think he will perform all that well. And I want to give you a good example. Do you remember someone we call the Freak?
Oh, sure.
Okay. The Freak was the Freak here, you know, and he was a top player, you know. But when he went there, you know, it became a different ball game. You know, they couldn't use him. You see, the way the Titans play is different. Then let me give you another example. Washington. You know a guy called the Hensworth? Albert? You remember? You know, they came and grabbed him and with all the money, more than 100 million. Then, more than 100 million. What happened? You know?
Yeah.
They couldn't use him the way they used him in Tata. And he didn't do what he did in the Tata.
Yeah, David, thanks so much for the call. I think that's mostly true. The one thing I will say is that A.J. Brown had to make a bunch of catches last year when Derrick Henry wasn't in the lineup. He had to make a bunch of catches last year when Julio Jones wasn't in the lineup. And he did, for the most part. He was the one guy in the Titans offense that basically when he played, they had success. And when he didn't play, they really, really struggled. And that has nothing to do with the fact that the offense was built around Derrick Henry. It was. That's a fact. The Titans want to run the football first. There's no question. He'll have a different offense that he'll be in, and I think he can shine in that offense. I think A.J. Brown's a great player. Now, the pressure's going to be on him at this point that he's got to show it. He's making $100 million, $25 million a year. So he's going to have to prove that he is that guy that he believes he is and that contract says he is. But I think he's totally capable of doing that. I just think there's a real frustration, and there should be amongst Titans fans, that they weren't able to keep him here. There haven't been that many A.J. Browns in the wide receiver room at St. Thomas Sports Park over the years, and they had that guy. And it seems like they should have come to an easier agreement. And again, that question about how much he was asking, that's fair, because it sounds like he was asking north of $25 million per year. He ended up getting 25 from the Eagles, but it sounds like he was asking for north of that from the Titans. And the Titans were saying, we're going to get you to about 20 with some incentives. And then AJ said, to Teron Davenport at ESPN, that if they got to 22, I would have been happy. But the problem was there was a disconnect there. And part of that is that A.J. Brown's getting overpaid for what his production is at this point. Now, he's a really good player. He may be an absolute superstar in this league. But he's getting overpaid in this contract for what he has done to this point. And the Titans weren't willing to do that. Whether you think that's smart on their part or not, they just simply weren't willing to do it. Back to the phones we go. Say hello to Kevin. Kevin, what's going on?
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Steve. I hope you're having a good evening.
Yep.
Where do I begin with this? Okay, well, I guess the elephant in the room, AJ. Now, I just wish the kid would have just kept his mouth shut a little bit. Now, I know he's represented well. I'm pretty sure Jimmy Sexton is his agent, and so I'm sure he heard a little chirping like you were talking about earlier in the broadcast from people he probably shouldn't have been listening to. But in the big picture of things, football is a business, and whether people will admit it or not, it's a dirty business. Now, people say, oh, our team is a family, we're brothers, and well, guess what? It's business. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of capable players out there fighting for what is basically 2,000 jobs a season when you think about how many players across 32 teams. And that's a very, very small pool. So, AJ, good for you getting your money. I guess in the big picture of things, that's, everybody, as they say, I want to get mines. But I can say, honestly, I was a little disappointed because, boy, was he in a perfect city for a player such as himself. So he had the stats. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I think I'm close. Probably 25 touchdowns, a few thousand yards, a little under 200 receptions, which is respectable numbers, especially like you just brought up last season where he had to really carry a little extra weight, which he did. The drops, maybe that, one hand is a brick, one hand's, really sticky, but that's just my opinion. But in the big picture of things, I think John Robinson and the coach had to sit back and say, how much can we tolerate? They're a great organization, the Titans are, but sometimes you just got to say, you got to cut somebody loose and let it go, because it's not fair to the rest of the organization that you have one player, trying to dominate the field, so to speak. And I wish all the best for AJ. I hope he does good in Philly, but let's just roll with the deck we're playing with now, and do the best we can. The Titans have a great coaching staff, and I'm sure they're going to work well with whoever they got. And Coach Grable, personally, I think Coach Grable just doesn't like my phrase, nobody else, a little whiny baby like that, because Grable's a man's man and a tough football player and a tough coach. But in my opinion, I just hope everything works out well for AJ and the Titans. I wish you a good evening, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I think everybody hopes that for both sides that this trade works out in the end. And the frustrating thing for the Titans, and I think for Mike Vrabel, is you saw how much he tried to put the sort of full court pressure out there in public of, AJ, we love you. We want you here. There's no way we're going to trade you. They were trying to talk him up because for whatever reason, AJ wasn't feeling the love. Whether it just be in the contract offer or whether it be from people talking on Twitter or whatever, that where he loves to live in social media, he's in that era where he spends all his time there. The Titans tried to make it so he would feel the love, and he just never did, and that has to be incredibly frustrating. And I think it's even more frustrating because you talk about, yes, sometimes you just have to jettison those guys that are the cancer, so to speak, or the guys who don't follow what everybody else in the building is doing, the Titans way, as it has sometimes been referred to. That's true. but you just don't hope one of those guys is one of your key cogs. And that's what somehow happened here. I mean, of the 4 or 5 most influential and best talents on the team, in terms of production and in terms of leadership, A.J. Brown's in that mix, offense and defense. And so you get to that place where all of a sudden you feel like you got to move that guy. That is really difficult. And I think a tough pill for John Robinson and Mike Vrabel and for all of Titans Nation to swallow after this deal. We'll take a break. We'll be back. More after this.